Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inside the Orange podcast. Firstly, thanks to everyone that has listened to the episode so far. If you haven't, there's a link in the description to my channel, so you can catch up with that before today's episode. I'm also delighted to announce that there is now a website that you can visit for more information about Inside the Orange and how you can get in touch. You can find us at insidetheorange.co.uk, and I'll leave that link in the description too. In today's episode, my guest will be McDonald's franchise owner Ken Tomkins, and I'll be talking to him about his positivity and optimism in his various passions in life. This episode is Inside the Orange with fast food, franchises, football and the future. Let's get into the episode. The episode today is with Ken. He's on the line. He joins me now. So, Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Rich. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So, you've been in McDonald's, I believe I read, for 35 years plus. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Isn't it? Yeah, I've had a 35-year journey with McDonald's, and I'm not stopping yet. It was my first job. I was at university, didn't know what I wanted to do, and in a way kind of fell into McDonald's as an opportunity. And I very quickly realised that this was a place where you could progress, you could do well, and if you worked hard and you applied yourself, you could really move quite quickly through the ranks. McDonald's was in store number 49 down in Peckham, southeast London, and they were expanding quite rapidly, and there were opportunities. And the short story of my career is wherever McDonald's offered me an opportunity, I said yes, and that led to me moving house 2 or 3 times. I was young, free and single, so moving into rented accommodation and going wherever they needed me in the Midlands, down to Sutton Coldfield, Wolverhampton, Bristol, and then a couple of years in Chicago at their global headquarters, coming back to London in the early 90s, newly married, and then spent the rest of my corporate career from my base in Milton Keynes, where we've been home since 94. And then I became a franchisee in 2011 here in Milton Keynes, as you say.
Okay, so talk to me, if you can, for day one. When you walked into McDonald's, did you think this is a job for life, or was it, where did the journey begin? How did it begin in your own mind?
No, I always joke with people that, there's nobody who ever started with McDonald's and said, yeah, I expect I'll be here when I'm 65. You look at that as in my case, it was the first job that I had, so straight out of uni, so you needed money, and I thought I'll give it a shot. It was a bit of a shock, but very quickly I thought, no, I'm enjoying this. It's good fun. It's very structured. The training was good, and the people that I was working with were fantastic. And then you need certain things to go your way. I asked for a transfer after about 3 or 4 months there. I'd just become an assistant manager. I asked for a transfer thinking it wouldn't happen, and it did. And they got me in a team up in Stoke-on-Trent when a restaurant opened up there. And I had a fantastic manager, fantastic group of people around me, many of whom have gone on to become franchisees like me in the end. And, really, as I say to people, that's when the ketchup started flowing in the veins. Really loved the job. Was having success, but learning loads and just having a lot of fun at work, to be honest, but really working hard and finding my way forward. So, yeah, that's kind of the way it started.
So was the team a big impact? Was it the fact you had a great team around you that kind of kept you there early days, or what kind of gave it more? Was it the structure you had, or was it your team?
Yeah. I mean, I loved working with a group of people who were diverse, and that is the thing about McDonald's. There's McDonald's for everyone, and that applies to our customers, but certainly in terms of the background of people that you end up working with in the restaurants and in the offices, it's been super diverse team. So you're learning way more than my hometown of Middlesbrough. It was a big education for me to go to South London, to Stoke-on-Trent, to Wolverhampton, to Bristol, and then end up in Chicago. So really, I travelled the world with McDonald's and learned a lot about people. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed target setting. I enjoyed motivating people to try and achieve and improve themselves and improve the standards for the customers, to improve training, cleanliness, all of the different things that you would imagine in a restaurant environment. And I just loved it. And at one point, I said I would do, if somebody was paying my bills, I would have done it for nothing. I'm that sad. And I've always enjoyed it since that moment. Probably December '85 was when I moved to that restaurant in Stoke, and never had a bad moment with McDonald's from then on. Just whatever challenge was set, I loved having a go at it. And fortunately, managed to surround myself with some good people and build some good teams and see them further their career over time. And it's been quite a ride.
Brilliant. I mean, the idea of Inside the Orange and why I wanted you as a guest was because you have to understand what drives people. So in the business today, can you see versions of yourself 35 years ago, and can you see people that would be where you are now in the current situation?
I mean, these are brilliant questions, Rich. I think I am a fairly ordinary bloke. I'm not that well educated. I'm not that bright. But I think when you apply yourself and you decide that you want to improve and you want to do well, and you manage to be able to communicate that atmosphere around you, you will find pretty ordinary people, just like me, that start to do extraordinary things. And that has always been an exciting part of working in McDonald's for me, to see just how excited you can get people to do some fairly basic things, and sometimes some quite extraordinary things. So really trying to get that passion and that fire going inside people is the thing that really is my sort of major, that's the major fun thing for me. And whatever the subject, whether it's running the restaurant, whether it's working in the community, whether it's developing people, driving standards, breaking records, we just get excited about all of those things. And it's really communication, it's training, and then trying to put that little bit of extra inspiration into people that helps them believe that they can achieve more than they've done in the past, and that they can improve and develop themselves. So I love nothing more than watching somebody who's brand new come through the system, work their way through to a sort of junior management level, and then subsequently come through, possibly end up running their own restaurant. One of the things we're very proud of in our franchise is that all 6 of my managers started as crew, part-time crew, and they've all worked their way through to operating restaurants with, on average, 100 employees, and a management team of 15 to 20 in each store. So big responsibility from humble beginnings, and I think I consider myself to have done pretty much the same thing as well.
No, and I think, again, what really highlights from that is, the next generation can see the previous generation, there's a path. So I think, in terms of employment, people look at McDonald's and would actually say, actually, there is a place for me here. And look, there's nothing better in a business when you go in somewhere and know that your manager has started from where you are. And I think that helps employment so much, and that helps retention in jobs as well, because if people can see there is an end goal and it's not just, an external process, or you do all right, but there's a level, you can, what you're saying is you can achieve whatever you want to achieve as long as you work hard for it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're a big global brand, obviously, but we're much misunderstood and misconstrued sometimes. So becoming a franchisee in 2011, one of the longer-term goals that I had was to try to just talk to people and let them see the facts about the business that we are. I suppose in the old days we were quite clandestine, quite closed. We weren't particularly transparent. But through the early part of the millennium and through to now, McDonald's have become more and more transparent, more and more confident to speak openly and let people see the truth behind the arches. And of course, here in Milton Keynes, that's been a long journey for me now. Is whenever you meet somebody and they ask you what you do, you're in for quite a long conversation. Number one, it's my favourite topic, so I can bore people. But everybody's interested; they want to know more, so for me, it's really trying to get the truth about the brand and our business locally, and get some respect for the people that work in McDonald's, because we don't employ idiots, and we employ good people who are working either part-time or full-time, and in many cases maybe with us for a year or two while they're doing their A-levels before they go off to college or university. And in other cases, they start when they're 16 or 18 or 25 or whatever, and they end up staying with us for a very long time. So I think just trying to get respect for the people that are working there and helping them show that it really is a good job. And that's the long-term aim for us. It's just to build that understanding of the brand.
You talk about the brand, so your kind of area that you go through is you've got it's called Kaizen. Can you just explain what Kaizen is for people that wouldn't know?
Yeah. I mean, when you become a franchisee, you're obviously setting up your own company to become a franchise of McDonald's. And of course, having had a 26-year corporate career before I became a franchisee, I knew a lot about McDonald's and I knew a bit about franchising, but all that piece of setting up your own business is completely new to me. And one of the things that, of course, they tell you you've got to do is you've got to choose a business name, and you've got to think carefully about what that business name is, because we're signing for a franchise of 20 years or more. So it really is a long-term commitment. And I was introduced to the concept of Kaizen, which is about continuous improvement, when I was working in Chicago in the early 90s. And that really sort of was a hook for me, the idea that you could continuously improve, and if you found a way of getting everybody in a team focused on finding those small improvements that could be made, those small improvements would all amalgamate up to big changes and big improvements. So Kaizen is a Japanese word. Kai means change and Zen means good. So it's talking about change is good. So it also means that you can't rest on your laurels. What you did yesterday isn't good enough. You need to improve for tomorrow. And if you think that you've just given excellent customer service, there may be a way to give even more excellent customer service. And so it's constantly trying to get everybody in the business thinking about how it could be better, what can we do to improve, and not allowing problems to be dwelt upon. So if all of my guys will be laughing when you hear me saying this, but don't talk to me about a problem, talk to me about the solution. And that gets people focused on finding a way to take things in a positive direction, rather than everybody standing around saying how difficult something is and it not going anywhere. So that's been a sort of driving force, and some pretty basic principles, aren't they? Let's face it. But it just means you're talking about a positive outcome, rather than dwelling on the past and saying how difficult everything is and everybody agreeing and nothing happening. So, that's really where Kaizen came from, and that's the name of the business. It's Kaizen Restaurants Limited. So,
talking about kind of improvement and change, are you aware and are you able to show vulnerability as the franchise holder? Can you show mistakes? Are you to your team? Do you know what I mean? Is it something that you are happy to show people, that vulnerability of yourself?
Absolutely. Oh, we make mistakes all the time, but we measure everything. And and another principle of this is that if you can measure it, and you'll be able to see whether it improves. If you can't measure it, then you can't. So measurement and data and stats are increasingly part of our business. Everything can be split down into how long something took, how many successful hours of trading, how many hours without a customer complaint, how many, everything is measured. And when you share the results of that measurement with your team so that they can see it rather than hanging on to it as a manager, all sorts of magical things start to happen, in that the people who are responsible for making the mistakes in the first place understand why it's a problem, and before you know it, are able to change their actions so that they prevent it. And even better than that, they then see that the result has changed, and they become more committed to attacking a particular problem or a particular challenge. In terms of my own vulnerability, absolutely. I think there's nothing more powerful than a boss that says, I've completely messed something up, and then apologizes genuinely, and I'm very good at apologising for my own mistakes and
that
demonstrating
from you.
my vulnerability. I think, honestly, I've worked for people who are the opposite, and you just look fake. I don't know where that comes from, but I think it's very powerful when a boss can say, "I've completely messed that up, and I realise I've made your life very difficult by doing it, and it won't happen again as best as I possibly can commit." Because it just shows that you've got a senior role as a restaurant manager. It's a big job, but the best thing they can do is apologise to their people when they've messed up, and I think that's a very important lesson.
No, absolutely. So how long's Kaizen been a thing? So you've been in for 35 years. How long's Kaizen been around?
We got our first two restaurants, which were Escape and Westcroft, on the 6th of November 2011. So we're coming up to 9 years next month. And we now have 6 restaurants in the franchise, so all in Milton Keynes.
I mean, as I say, it is amazing, and yeah, I'm going to get onto a bit in a minute of how we actually met was
Yes.
through McDonald's.
Yes.
So I'll just kind of clarify to people. So we actually met when my son wanted to join a football team. He joined late. He was about 13 when he joined a youth team, and he. There was limited opportunities to walk in. He's a goalkeeper, as you're aware, Ken. And I remember there was the advert. You'd had a link with Woburn Lions, a local team, and we answered the advert. And he went to have a little trial and a play. Now that was all set up in a partnership, wasn't it, between Woburn Lions and yourself? Because the coaches at the time were actually McDonald's employees.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're very proud to have had a long-standing relationship with the Woburn of Wavendon Football Club, which began in the second year that I was a franchisee. So, we're on 8 years now. And I think when you create a local partnership like that, as long as it's good, all sorts of good things happen in the later years, because just like any partnership, business or a relationship, at the beginning it's just sort of getting to know one another and it's fairly transactional. The really good thing that's happened with us there over time is that we've started to become more and more open, more and more interested in how the long-term development of that club can be aided and assisted, and where are the opportunities for crossover between, as you've just said, for our employees, as well as for the benefit of the club and for the players. And your son, Liam, by the way, is not just a goalkeeper, he's a goalkeeper of some repute. I haven't seen him play for a while, but he is certainly somebody that we saw develop fantastically. And I'm sure as parents, you will say not just as a footballer, but as a young man as well. And I think that's one of the things from watching my own kids in football teams a few years before, is that it's sport development, it's exercise, it's team working, it's discipline, it's all of those different things, but it's also the just communication and maturing and just learning different skills. So one of the exciting things that you referred to was that we talked to the club a few years back, so where are the other exciting opportunities for crossover between what we do and what you do? And I was talking to Robert Hill down there and sort of saying, we've got lots of people that play football in our business. We've got loads of people who are really good footballers. And, long story short, he said, well, we're always looking for coaches. Is there a way that we could get some of your footballing managers and crew to take their coaching qualifications with us and really commit to take on their own team? And again, long story short, that's exactly what happened with two of the guys down at the Brick Hill restaurant on the A5 roundabout, who were just over the moon to get an opportunity like that. And they set up the team, had all sorts of trials and tribulations, as you can imagine, at the beginning, with a brand new team, getting lots of advice from the parents, lots of advice from the opposition, lots of advice from us, and probably not winning very much at the beginning. But gradually, as is the way with Kaizen, all sorts of good things start to happen. And, it's for you to say, but I think a really good bond was created amongst the team and the coaches and the parents and the club. And that's been one of the fantastic sort of outcomes for us to just see how we can help our team, but at the same time as helping helping the club develop.
I mean, one of the things that stayed with me, and why I consider you a friend, is when the first time we actually met, and this is why it matters to people sometimes. I remember after a game we treated Liam to a McDonald's. Great after a game, running around for a little while, going have some food. But it was a nice treat. And I remember you spotted him he was in his goalkeeper top, which was bright yellow at the time, so it was quite easy to spot. And you came over and said, "Do you mind if I join you?" And we said, "Oh, of course." And you introduced yourself. And as parents, when you know someone cares that you've never met, that speaks so much. And again, Liam's moved on in terms of teams and joined the different teams, but we have stayed in communication ever since because of what you did for us as parents, for allowing that opportunity. Because we always wanted Liam to play football, but it was always difficult with the commitment. So to have that chance when he was old enough, we could, and everything kind of fit. But it was your kind of having that, just coming over to us and having that conversation meant more to us than you could probably ever imagine. So thank you for that. Well,
it's really nice of you to mention, and it's the sort of thing that you think, well, it was a bit of a chance meeting, wasn't it? I might not be out in the dining area at Brick Hill every Saturday morning, but I think whenever I see the colours of the club shirt coming into a restaurant, I will always make a beeline for the family and the parents and the player and try and meet and welcome. So we now sponsor pretty much all the teams there. We've got branding on all the shirts, and we've got 6 teams now, including a girls' team. And as you say, the managers then became coaches. So it's a long-term relationship, and when you get that, you really get an affinity to what the values of the club are, and you understand about the structure of the club, the vision of the club, and it's a well-run club, no doubt about it. And so I think, to me, it's always good again when your kids have played. My boys played nowhere near as well as Liam, but they played for a while, and you understand what it's like to be a parent out there on a miserable November morning when the rain's coming down and your team's being beaten, and you've got to console the kids taking them home, etc. So I think when you've got that empathy, I think that helps. But yeah, it's easy for me to do. It's a pleasure, and I'm glad as you say, we've chatted ever since.
Yeah, no, honestly. So let's talk about then how football started for you, because you're a football supporter at heart, aren't you? Do you want to give us a story of where your football journey began?
I was born in Middlesbrough. I'm a Middlesbrough fan, and even now when I say I support Middlesbrough, there are people that say, "Were you born there?" And I said, "Have you ever met anyone who wasn't born in Middlesbrough who says they support Middlesbrough?" It's kind of a rite of passage, it's just the way it is. And I went to my first game with my dad when I was 6. We won 1-0. I was sitting on his lap, and I threw my arms in the air when they scored, and I punched his chin. That's one of those stories. I've supported nobody else, so I mean it's Middlesbrough all the way, and it's hard work basically. we're not a glory team, but I think you apply yourself to your team and your club, and you just follow them as best you can. I don't travel to see games these days. None of my kids will go with me. It's a bit of a lonely experience, and it's a 3-hour journey north and a 3-hour journey back to watch us lose. So we don't do that trip too often. But no, I'm Middlesbrough till I die, basically.
And something you've always said to me is kind of your optimism. How does optimism work as a football supporter sometimes?
I am, my team will again be chuckling. I am annoyingly optimistic bloke. And I think that has helped me in McDonald's, and I think it has probably annoyed my wife on occasion and my kids. But I think you have to be optimistic. It's a bit like fixating on a problem and everybody agreeing something's a problem, and then 3 weeks later you're still talking about something being a problem. If you're in a work setting or in a football team or you're in any organisation and you're still talking about the same problem 3 weeks later, I mean, that really annoys me. That's just completely soul-destroying and sucks the life out of you. Everybody's woe is me, it's the end of the world. And I suppose something just makes me try and find the possibility of a solution, and how can we make it better? What can we do to try and get out of this hole, whatever it is? And sometimes that's tough because everybody will remind you how difficult the problem is all the time. But I suppose when you're leading, you've always got rank. You can say, well, I'm not going to sit around in this mess for too long. Come on, follow me out of it. Let's see if we can get ourselves out of this mess. So yeah, I am annoyingly optimistic. I joke to people that if I were in a fire, I'd probably be saying something like, well, at least I didn't wear a jumper today. And I can find a positive in almost every situation. And hopefully that's more good than bad.
I mean, as I say, being football supporters, again, I'm a Watford boy myself, and we've just had a very terrible 6 months of life, to be fair. But I think there is always the optimism in football, isn't there? Regardless of whether your team's doing well, if you consider yourself against unfortunate teams teams like Bury that have fallen out the wrong end of it, there's still a lot to be optimistic about, isn't there? If you can still go to your team on a Saturday, and my heart really went out to Bury and the teams. There's loads of non-league teams that have gone out of business. But do you feel though that the model for football seems to be, if you don't get a result, you're out? Is that right? Could that not be done better? What's your feelings?
Well, that's definitely the case with Watford's manager. Management moves, isn't it?
Thanks for bringing that up.
but in the end, it seemed to work for them. Whereas for other clubs that shuffle and change, and I think that was the interesting thing to watch from afar. That you watched it at the beginning. You sort of been through 3 managers in a year, or maybe 4, and you think, how on earth are they making that work? But they did seem to make it work. And even last season, there you were, 2 games to go, and big Nigel Pearson, Borough legend, was given the elbow. And that, unfortunately, on that occasion, that did not work. I think you had 2 really horrible fixtures left. But you can't help but think maybe they just should have hung on. But that's the way those guys are running that club. And you wouldn't argue with them over the last 4 or 5 years, I'm guessing. No, or maybe you would. But
no, I mean, one of the big things I think from a Watford fan's perspective was the fact that everyone made this big drama about how many managers we had. Yet our stay in the Premier League was just as long as Bournemouth's under Eddie Howe, under one manager. Yeah. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to it, is there? Do you know what I mean? But what I love with Watford is the fact that the culture is set up, so the managers come in knowing how the hierarchy lie. So I suppose the good thing about it, you mentioned earlier on with what you do, transparency. If you know what you're walking into, I've never had one manager come away from Watford publicly say, well, that was a joke, why have I been sacked? Do you know what I mean? Because they understand the nature of the beast, so... Right. So again, it comes to that word transparency again, even in football, I suppose. If you know what you're dealing with, most of the nasty kind of issues and transfers and manager moves normally come out when they're out of the blue, and that's when the press have a field day, But if you know what you're going in, the press are always going to tell us our model's wrong. It's a very European model, but if it works, then as a supporter, you've just got to back what your team does, and you've got to believe in the right decisions of your team. So,
well, they certainly believe in Kaizen there, don't they? Change is good. 3 or 4 times a season, we'll try another change, and and as I say, it worked for them, and you've watched that in. I can't think of another club right now, but you've watched that in other clubs, and it's just been the beginning of the end where they're constantly shuffling and changing. But Watford seem to be successful with that, and so fair play to them.
Yeah, well, we'll wait till May before we say about success, because there's still a long way to go in this Championship season before we can start doing that.
Quite right.
So. Back to yourself and back to kind of Kaizen and McDonald's then. So what kind of happens after you? So what's the succession plan? I mean, from what you can say today, are you actually going to have to be bricked out of that building, or those buildings, to not be there anymore? Tell me what's going on,
I have. If people say to me, "Oh, how long do you think you'll do it for?" I say, "Well, I would like to be the first 100-year-old McDonald's franchisee." And of course they laugh, but again, the people who know me go, "He's probably serious. he probably means it." I said, I'm an annoying guy because I've pretty much always enjoyed what I've done for work. I've had some very challenging roles, but I've loved it. I've had some tough assignments, but I've just sort of attacked it and loved it. And I'm in a position now where I'm in my hometown of Milton Keynes. I've got a strong team of people around me who are super committed to working in the way that our business sort of works. They understand how they can benefit when we're successful, when we grow, when we purchase more restaurants. They can see career future for them, and as a result, I've got a stable team of great people, and that means that you can constantly be raising the bar of expectations, challenging them, and getting them to do the same with the development of the people underneath them, all the time just strengthening the operation, which of course is the thing that the customer sees, so that we can become more and more consistent in terms of our customer delivery. With 100 employees in a restaurant and open 24/7, there are a lot of moving parts, and your visit today versus your visit yesterday, it can be different because it'll be a different person cooking, a different person serving, and just one moment of madness from an employee that their attitude is wrong to a customer. Unfortunately for that customer, that's their moment of truth. That's what they experienced, and that then becomes the story that they tell everyone. And vice versa. If you catch the person and everything's brilliant and it's all superb, that's the story you're going away with. And of course, as we all know, people choose restaurants much more based on what their friends tell them is a good place to go and eat, or a good place to go and work. And so all the time, our guys have the opportunity to build a positive story in the minds of a customer and an employee, which will then influence the future strength of the business. But in answer to your first question, I've no plans to go anywhere, Rich. I'm here.
That's good to hear.
And the business is not for sale. So
let's get that straight out there. So you mentioned now, I mean, one of the things I said in my first ever episode that I did of this was that it's about understanding people, and one of the things you do have no control over is your customers. So how you have such a snapshot of how to understand them. You don't know if they're having a bad day, if something's gone wrong or something like that. So you could still catch people on a day. How do you make sure that you in the short space, because it is a fast food chain, how do you make sure in that space that you read those customers right? How do you kind of do that in a restaurant that's style?
I think reading the customer is a good phrase, and that is the case. I could know you pretty well, and if 9 times out of 10 you seem pretty happy and jolly and your usual self, we'd very quickly settle into the same conversation. But if I'm reading you and you are clearly not yourself today, and I know that, then it's having that empathy and that skill to be able to take a slightly different approach and show your empathy. And so in customer service, that magic's happening where the employee is reading the customer in that way. It's somebody that they regularly serve a cup of coffee to at breakfast time. They chat to them. They probably know about their kids. They probably know about their dog. They probably know which football team they support. And one day they can just tell that person is not themselves. And I think when you're a customer and you realize that somebody who's paid to, pass you a bag of food or a drink or something like that, spots that in you, I think that's just gold dust. It's absolutely priceless. And it's that sort of impressive service that, are the really magic moments for us. And of course, as a customer, when you get that, especially at McDonald's, you just don't expect it. And so we have a lot of fun about trying to encourage and then celebrate when somebody is recognised for doing exactly that sort of thing. Because I don't think you can teach that. That's more of an attitude, isn't it? And that's really just looking for people that like people. And if you like people, then you're going to be able to read when they're not on their top game. And if in a brief interaction, a brief transaction, an employee can turn the mood of a customer from actually, thanks for that, I feel pretty good about that. They may not say it, but they drive away feeling a little happier. Then, to me, that's just the real gold dust that you're trying to get.
Yeah, and how challenging is it though? Because we are a society of people that if something goes right, yeah, well done, it went well, walk away. But if something goes wrong, right, social media, talk to people, how can that be frustrating sometimes when you just you don't get the positive in the same way that you get the negative, do you?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, a lot of moving parts in a 24-hour day where you're serving hundreds of customers, and you've got so many different people who are customer facing, people taking a break, somebody else coming on, food not quite being right for that customer. The customers themselves have every right to complain if it's not right, and as long as that's done in a sort of civil fashion, we actually want to hear more from a customer. How were your fries? They were good. Yeah, but were they as good as they were last week? How are they today? And encouraging that level. I think what you're driving at is that sometimes it can get a bit disrespectful and it can get a little bit annoying. I have no problem with social media. I think social media opens up so many different channels for you to be able to speak to your customers and opinion formers, people who are potential customers, potential employees, and the community of Milton Keynes. And at the same time, when there's something that's not right, if you're on social media, then you're more accessible. And I will get customers right directly to me, or tweet me, or message me through one platform or another. And I welcome the chance to be able to speak to them directly. And ideally, your challenge then is to put it right, apologise quickly, and convince them that you're serious about trying to make it right for them. And just the basics of customer service, isn't it? But sometimes people get very irate about something not being right, but so they should. They're paying their hard-earned cash for it, and they should expect it to be good. So I think our challenge is just to really be on our game as best we possibly can, morning, noon, and night.
And I suppose the fact what Kaizen is continuous improvement. So if something is wrong, it's better to know it's wrong to change it, I suppose. So it goes back to that, maybe?
Well, absolutely, yeah. And I suppose the things that change that then will be, movement in the management team. You think it's like a football team. You think you've got a great blend. You think you've got the perfect team. And then you move somebody for an opportunity, put them in a different restaurant. Somebody new will be promoted through the ranks. And somehow the team isn't quite gelling just the same as it was before. So it is like football management. It's trying to figure out what that team requires and acknowledging that any time you make a change, adding somebody, removing someone, changing job responsibilities, it's a different team. You're starting again, and you've got to start with those basics. But as restaurant managers, we talk to them a lot about team development, team building, team working, and if that theory hits home and is embedded in their brain, then that in most situations they're going to see that opportunity and hopefully be preventing problems before they arise. Because again, that's your best case scenario, isn't it? Doesn't always work, but we're always there. We're always there to coach from the sidelines, just like the manager. But yeah, that's a lot of fun, because that's a soft skill. It's not really a science. It's just a skill that you're relying that you've got the person really thinking about those key touches, those key things that they can input that will create even better, stronger teams, and ultimately deliver better for the employee or for the customer.
I mean, you from what I know from a basic understanding, you do have a great team of people around you. I mean, obviously we met Laura a few times. If I'm all right to call her out as well.
Yes.
She fantastic in terms of customer engagement. How important is it that everyone gets people then? How important is it?
I think McDonald's came out with a great line probably 15, 20 years ago, which was, we're actually not a burger business. We're a people business that just happens to sell burgers, and we've used that mantra ever since. It's so much about managing people, and I'm not good with equipment. I'm not good with technical stuff. I'm awful with IT. My speciality is to try and work with people, work to communicate, work to inspire people to have a go, give them confidence to face challenges and learn from the experiences that they've had. Unfortunately, I managed to surround myself with people who've got those technical skills, and Laura's marketing communications events, that's her part of the business, and she does an exceptional job with that. I've got Andy in the sort of senior role, who's super techie, great with equipment, very good with people, but multidisciplinarian of all sorts of things. And Peter as well in a sort of supervisory role, very close to the operations and the training of the teams in the restaurant. So, I think it's about filling the gaps that, in this case, the boss doesn't have. There are many, and helping those people be successful as best you possibly can.
But you mentioned there, like, filling the gaps the boss doesn't do. But you see so much in business sometimes where the boss tries to do it all, and ultimately it doesn't always work well.
No, and I've certainly tried that in the early days, but I found out painfully just how disastrous that can be. And I think I think all of the direct team that report into me will acknowledge that I have a loose management style rather than a close, tight management style. It's finding people that have got the right culture, have the skills. If they don't have the skills, you can sharpen them through training, but then giving people the space to make decisions and not admonishing them for one decision that goes wrong. You make a mistake, you learn from it. If somebody's making a repetitive mistake, I'll probably be a bit sarcastic about it. That's the third or the fourth time that's happened this week. At what point are we going to fix that? But I don't generally get mad at people. I think it's just trusting somebody to learn from their own experience and understand that they've got the power to make changes, and that's something that you often hear people in jobs where they just feel they're not allowed to spend 50 pence or ridiculous cost control that's put on them. I don't want that. I want them to run it like it was their own business. That's what I was told when I first became a manager in Wolverhampton in 1987. It's your restaurant. I was 23. Run it like it was your own restaurant. And those are magical words when you're a university dropout. It's brilliant. You're responsible for everything here. And that's a big responsibility. But I know that our managers still feel the same way, whether they're assistant, whether they're a business manager. Run it like it was your own restaurant. It's your team. It's your community. It's your restaurant. It's your equipment. It's your sales. It's your profit. They're your customers. Blah, 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 blah. And that's a very inspiring idea for, again, people who are my age have become restaurant managers in our organisation.
You mentioned their community. So one of the things I know you've been a big part of is the Love MK Hate Litter scheme.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How did you get into that? And what's it? Well, it's quite clear what it is, but just give us a bit of info on that if you can.
Yeah, I mean, being involved in the local community is so important to McDonald's in general. It's part of our DNA. It's one of those sort of founding principles that when you become a franchisee, you're there for a long period of time. As I said, we sign a franchise deal for 20 years. And the really good thing about that is that it gives, as long as I don't mess up, it gives long-term consistency and stability to both the restaurants. And it also allows us, our business, to build that local reputation, not just through customer service and employment, but also through contribution and partnership within the community for the long term. So whether it's football, as I've talked, our relationship with Woburn and Wavendon Football Club is 8 years and shows no sign of stopping. And because you're able to have that long-term relationship, the partnership becomes stronger, as I've said, and you're able to extend your partnership. And of course, you're able to extend the trust of both parties. And the same is true for litter prevention and litter picking. Litter events have been part of what's our business, as in Kaizen Restaurants in Milton Keynes. Pretty much from the day I started, I knew that I wanted to do a lot to harness the community and harness our own teams and lead from the front on this, to be honest, Rich. And we have had probably 50 different litter events over time. Every summer we do a 24-hour event, which takes us on a route all the way around Milton Keynes, and we stop at every McDonald's en route. And we've had 100 or more people involved in that the previous year. Obviously, we had to do it this year. I did it by myself almost, but we've had 100 volunteers involved with that in previous years. And I suppose, again, I highlight that because I'm a bit of a cynic. If I hear that Ken's done a litter pick and he gets his picture on social media, I applaud lightly. But if he keeps coming back and keeps doing it, and he's obviously getting older and frailer, then it really looks like you are committed. And that's the thing for me, because that's the stuff that builds trust. A guy in a suit handing over a cardboard check to a football team for a photograph in the newspaper, who you think, well, they've given 200 quid, but he's never going to see that team again. He's never going to have anything to do with it. I'm a bit of a cynic, so I want to make sure that we have long-term partnerships. Same is true with litter. Laura in our team, as I said, who's marketing communications and events manager, in lockdown started a hashtag, which was, as you say, hashtag #LoveMKHateLitter. Very simple idea. You love the place where you live and you do business, and you hate litter. And of course, what we all saw, I think, during those weird weeks of lockdown was that roads were quieter, nobody was shopping, all the pubs were closed, all football sadly was off, and parks started to flourish, wildlife was flourishing, and there was absolutely less litter around. And that wasn't necessarily because people weren't going to pick it up. But of course, then when we reopened society, you started to get quite irate because you saw more and more litter. Laura began this hashtag, started a Facebook group. Long story short, over 250 people on that group in a very short space of time. And this was really, again, just about seeing a problem and saying, if all we do is stand around and say somebody should do something about it, nothing happens. So Laura really led from the front, and she was there doing litter picks with friends, socially distanced, with her mum, with colleagues, with neighbours, and then with people that we hadn't met before, and posting about it on that site and encouraging people to go and do the same. And of course, this had a really positive impact, positive effect, with a whole number of events all over Milton Keynes. So again, perhaps you saw it in your part of town and you were moved to go out with your family and do a brief litter pick, or your friends or whoever. And then they got some encouragement, some recognition for it through a photograph on this Facebook page. And then the whole thing really ballooned over September during the Tidy Britain clean up for September, where they did a fortnight of activity all over the country. And we had lots of involvement during that period and an increased amount of activity. And I think it's, as you say, it's being involved in the community, and it's not stopping. That's the thing I think that builds trust. It's that you do something and then you just repeat and you carry on. You will not stop. And if you are leading from the front, then it shows that you're very serious about it. So that's a long, rambling answer to your question about Love MK Hate Litter. I'm very proud of what she's done with it, and great that we've had involvement from people all over the community in Milton Keynes.
No, and I think we are in a stage now where it is so important, in the times of what's going on with the planet. I mean, I think everyone was saying that during lockdown, when it was quiet, the lakes look clearer, and everything, everything. The parks look nice. It was nice to go out and walk around because it was almost unspoiled, and I don't want to get too much into it, but when normality, or the new normal, whatever you want to call it, returns, you do start to see the slips again, and it is quite sad to see that. But with initiatives like that, if people see it and people know about it, then that helps, and it might just encourage. Even today, if you talk about it as we've done, even if one person goes out and does it because they've heard of what you say, then they're making a difference, aren't they? And that's the bottom line, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think people are going to litter. People are going to throw stuff out the window of a car that's driving down the H5 Portway. I see it happen, and some people get very, very angry about it. And I said, well, it's going to happen. How do you change it? You change it through recognising people who are taking positive action rather than just grumbling and moaning about the offender, and the authorities not enforcing fines or whatever. Let's go and be part of the solution rather than be part of the problem, and take some action. And if you could recognise and encourage people for a small effort, that small effort could then impact their neighbours, their family. Before you know it, you get an army of litter pickers all over Milton Keynes, all out there trying to make action. And often the reason that people don't go and litter pick is they think, well, I wouldn't know how to start and I haven't got a litter picker. And so increasingly we're keen to find ways to take away those reasons, and whether it's helping people organise, inviting them to come to events, and ideally getting them their own litter picker, because then you're running out of reasons why you can't do it. Because it's very simple. You need a bag, you need a litter picker, you need to be able to go out and walk. Mm-hmm. And pretty much that's it. So everybody feels a bit strange and a bit weird the first time they do it. People are looking at me. Well, they are, but honestly, if you're that bothered about that, then don't bother do anything. I've got over people looking at me weird with a litter bag and a litter picker, and just go and have some fun.
Oh, that's brilliant.
See if you can see and make something happen.
Yeah. I want to talk, because obviously we mentioned lockdown there. How did lockdown, and I don't want to dwell on it, but how did lockdown affect your team? Yeah. I mean, this is a challenge of a lifetime, no doubt about it. I've dealt with some stuff in McDonald's in my career over time, which I thought was the challenge of a lifetime. But all of those things have been eclipsed with what we've experienced in this country and globally over the course of this year. It was undoubtedly the first 2 weeks of closure were the most stressful of my entire working life. I had 650 people on the payroll, and I had no income coming in. And of course, I had to pay those people. And I'm thinking, I'm very quickly going to run out of money here without help. So that was a very, very, very stressful situation. The government helped through the schemes that everybody knows about, and McDonald's helped. And McDonald's have been a great franchising organisation forever, and they have demonstrated their support for their franchisees exceptionally well. No franchisee in the UK has gone bust. Nobody's gone under. Support from our suppliers, support from the banks. Pretty much this is the way that we call it our system works, that the sort of partnership working together for joint outcomes has meant that we've been able to get through it. Very difficult, very challenging, but get through it and then get opened again. And after those first 2 weeks, once you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, really the lockdown period was about staying in touch at an appropriate level with our employees through Facebook groups that we have, and periodically talking to them, having quizzes, having chats, Ask Ken afternoon that we did for a few weeks there, and the management team as well in Zoom calls, just communicating, keeping up to date with what was happening, making sure that everybody was okay, and then giving them information, because of course as McDonald's started to chart its way back to opening, all the guys in our team needed was, how are we going to do this, what are we going to do, when do we need to do it? So it was very clear one-way information at that point, and they'd go away and do it and come back and say, I've done it. And we'd had lots of calls like that. But I think when you start to see the way out of it, again, being a boringly optimistic bloke, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I could convince people that I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm fortunate that they followed me and they gave it absolutely everything. It was really hard work, because of course our customers had missed us a lot, and they all came out to see it, and we're very glad that they did, because of course what that has meant is that I've not laid anybody off. The 650 are still working for us. I'm really proud of that, because and that's down to our customers as well, because they certainly love McDonald's, and they've come and visited us a few times over recent months. But yeah, one of the big things at the beginning was, you don't want to lay people off. That's not part of what we're trying to do in this business. In my business, I want to create jobs. I want to create more jobs. I want to help people develop. And so we really sort of challenged ourselves to make sure that we didn't lose anybody. And thankfully at this point, although there's still uncertain weeks ahead as we go into
the winter. At the moment, we've got everybody. So, yeah, really proud of that.
Yeah, you should be, totally. I mean, you know, it has been a horrible year, but one of the things that I kind of want to highlight is you even helped me through a bit of time, because I think at the beginning of lockdown, I follow you on Twitter, and you put a bit about one day every day a different piece of music that meant something to you. It was a little bit of fun, and I did every single day with you.
You did,
and again, it's just bits like that sometimes that, you know, you know, in that sense, it means nothing in terms of McDonald's, but it's nice to know that someone is out there and just going, rather than doom and gloom, rather than this, that, or the other, let's talk about music, because I want to ask you about music as well. I mean, music inspires me more than anything in the world. So firstly, thank you for doing that on Twitter, because it made me, for every morning I was thinking, which song is it going to be today? Which song?
Yeah.
And, you know, so what does does music keep you positive? How does music affect you?
Yeah, no, I've always loved music. I used to I played in bands and orchestras and stuff when I was through to the sort of age of 18, but I've always gone to gigs. I've always loved music, and I've got an enormous catalogue of music, and I'm a bit of a music trivia geek as well. So beyond McDonald's, I do have a life, and so Middlesbrough Football Club, music, and McDonald's are probably the three main things, although the team in the background are shouting, tell them about photography as well. There's been lots of good things that have come from this sort of awful period of lockdown, and we talked about a few things. But as you say, people's connection, because they couldn't be connected. You couldn't go and meet people, friends and family, and the broader community. We found that social media was the way that you could stay connected and look out for people. And so you did it in a work sense to make sure that your employees were feeling okay and staying in touch with everybody. But as you say, you know, one of the things that you found was that you had a lot of time on your hands. You don't have to go to work. There's only so much you can do in the garden. There's only so many times you can paint that wall in the living room. And I think, you know, we built a number of communities, and as you say, this music thing was just something that was a bit of a challenge, and you just have a bit of fun with it. And I picked up a variety of new followers there who were quite interested in the obscure Radiohead track that I played on day 17.
I was wondering when Radiohead were going to get a mention.
So music's very important to me.
And you, as you've just said, photography as well, something I don't know, so tell me about that.
I think since the advent of the iPhone and an improved camera on the iPhone, I've taken more and more pictures, and really through lockdown, this sort of accelerated. I did a lot of photography and sort of started doing more editing. I follow some very good photographers through social media and Instagram and one thing and another, and I found myself in a group, a sort of social group with people there and learning from their experience, and then I bought a camera, and then all sorts of different things have happened to them. So I've now got over 40,000 photos on my iPhone 11 Pro. My wife and kids and my workmates are quite used to seeing me stopping in the street to take a picture of something. I go and play golf now with my franchisee buddies. They're quite used to seeing me halfway down the fairway, just saying, hang on a minute, I'll be with you in a minute. I've seen a flower or a butterfly or a bee or a tree or some river or something that I want to take a picture of. But yeah, for an old bloke, I'm turning into a bit of a photographer geek.
It's important to have hobbies, though, and as I say, in fact, I do say I don't know that a few of your Twitter posts very early in the morning normally are pictures of something or other. Yes, so I must admit I have seen some of the photography out there.
Yeah, when you get older, Rich, you'll understand that you'll wake up quite early in the morning.
I have no idea what you mean. I mean, we've been chatting now for quite a while. I suppose the last thing I really want to ask is, for someone who's optimistic, for someone who wants to look at what is the future? What is the future for what you guys are doing?
From a business point of view, there are two restaurants in the city that we don't currently have the franchise for. They're operated by the McDonald's Corporation. So I'd like to think, if I'm a good boy and we keep on doing well, I'd like to think that we might see those in our franchise going forwards. And there are, we opened Wolverton 18 months, 20 months ago, and we opened the one at Brick Hill back in 2013. So if new restaurants were to come along in a growing city, let's face it, it's the fastest growing place in Britain. If there are new restaurants that come along, I think it's more likely that I'd be asked to take the franchise for that. So we see growth in the business and more job creation. I want to see us continue all of our brand building, trust building activities to extend that across a wider audience, so that all those people that are interested to know a little bit about our business have access to us. And really, I suppose the pride that I have for the brand and the way that the brand operates and the things that we stand for and the improvements that we're making, all of those things can come through on a global level and a national level. But to bring that closer to home in Milton Keynes, and our mission really is just to get respect and recognition as being a good employer in running good restaurants with good people in a fantastic city.
Fantastic. I mean, for me, it's been, I think I've known you for about 4 or 5 years, but it's just been so kind of inspiring to have you in my life, and a part of someone I consider a friend. And I'll be honest, someone who, again, I messaged you, this is still quite early days in terms of the podcast, and when I said, can you do something, you were like, yeah, we need more people like you, mate, to be fair. And thank you again so much for even just coming and having a chat and doing this today. It means so much to me. And again, you've got such a good message that is so important, especially in this current time. It's really important to get out there about positivity. And
You're very kind, and I wish you all the best with it, Rich. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. So for the episode today, Ken, thank you so much. Goodbye and take care.
All the best.
Thank you.